Liver is one of the most nutritious meats on the planet, and it's absolutely delicious if it's prepared right. So in this video, I wanna show you how I make an amazing beef liver pate. It's easy, it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best ways to eat liver. I'm gonna spread it on some sourdough toast, some green onions on top. This is so good and so delicious. I look forward to it every time I'm gonna eat it. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. The first step we gotta do is get our liver prepped. I got about 2 pounds of beef liver here. I picked this up at the local supermarket. One of the great parts about the popularity of liver going up is that it's now available in commercial supermarkets, and it's still relatively inexpensive compared to any other beef products. I think I picked this up for, this just a couple of bucks. So 2 pounds of beef for a couple of bucks is very inexpensive. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take this liver and I'm gonna cut it into smaller pieces. We're making a pate here, so we're gonna blend it down. So we don't need to be really exact about how we cut it. So I like to cut it into just small little sections, maybe about, probably a little larger than I would cut up if I was making the liver and onions, but something like that we're gonna put inside of this bowl. So I'm gonna cut these into these individual pieces. And again, I'm not being super exact. A common question is, do I remove any of like this membrane? I could if I was doing maybe like a liver and onions or something that we would eat it whole, but because we're blending it down, I find that I don't really have to, and I'm trying to get, you know, as much of that connective tissue in as much as possible. So once we blend this down, you're never gonna notice, so I just keep it on. I don't really notice a difference if I keep it on, especially in the pate. One step I definitely don't skip is soaking the liver in some milk. The one thing that I found that can cut down on the waste but not completely eliminate it is use a very shallow bowl to soak the liver. You're not gonna have to use as much milk. So I'm just gonna spread this liver out as shallowly as possible, making sure the liver is going all the way to the edges of the bowl. And then I'm gonna just slowly pour in milk and let it soak in until I cover it completely. And here maybe I used, I don't know, probably less than a cup of milk, but I've tried to skip this step before or use other things like vinegar and water, and nothing cuts the bitterness or that metallic flavor down like the milk. So although we can skip steps, this is something I definitely would not. I'm gonna let this soak for about 10 to 20 minutes. While this is soaking, I'll start prepping the rest of the ingredients for this recipe. Outside of the liver, we do not have to prep a whole lot. We're gonna put a small dice on this onion, and we're gonna mince up some garlic. And the great part about making pate, just like I said before about cutting up the liver, we don't gotta be super exact. As long as the pieces are small and the food processor will be able to get to them, we don't have to be really exact about how we're cutting it. This is not the finished product that's going in there. We're gonna blend it all together. And here I'm using a yellow onion. You can use whatever onions that you have around. The only thing I wouldn't use is a red onion. It might change the color a lot. Sometimes I do use shallots, even though they have a pinkish hue to them. And if you've watched my liver and onions recipe, this recipe is a very similar recipe. It has a lot of common ingredients. We prepare the liver very similarly. So if you made that recipe and you like it, you may love this one. You know, I love liver, and I love how it tastes a lot, although a lot of people say that they don't like it because of the taste, but I guess that's maybe an acquired taste or maybe something that some people like and some people don't, but I know it's super nutritious, and it's a real treat every time I make it. So now we're gonna peel this garlic. And here I got about 4 large cloves of garlic. You tone up or tone down the garlic to whatever your garlic preference is. I mean, I love garlic, and these garlic cloves are really big, so, you know, there's a decent amount of garlic flavor going in here. We're gonna trim off the hard root end of the garlic. It's an essential step that I just like never skip when I'm prepping garlic. And now from here, we'll smash the cloves down, and we'll put a fine mince on this garlic. And because we don't have to be so precise with how we're cutting stuff, we can move pretty quickly through this recipe. So this liver's been soaking for about 15 minutes. I'm gonna take out the pieces and lay them in another bowl that I've lined with some paper towel. I'm gonna make sure that I shake the liver dry of any excess milk. I'll probably pat it down a little bit too, but you can already see the pinkish tint that's coming out into the milk. And that's probably where a lot of the impure flavors that we're trying to get out of it, because we do like the flavor of the liver, but sometimes it can be a little harsh if you skip this step. So you can already see that the milk already has this, that pinkish tint to it. You know, people hate with the waste that comes with this because milk isn't cheap anymore. I do admit that we are taking product and throwing it in the garbage, but that's just a step that if you want to skip it yourself, you go ahead. But every time I skip it, I can definitely taste skipping that step. And when I use the shallow bowl, I mean, that's not much milk at all. That's gotta be probably a half a cup of milk. So if I gotta pour a half a cup of milk down the drain for that step, that's okay. Again, if you wanna use other things, you could use water with a little drop of vinegar in it, but I find that this is the thing that really does the job the best. Okay, once I pat that liver dry and it's had a chance to drain out and it's nice and dry, I'm gonna take it and transfer it into this bowl, and we're gonna season it with a little salt and a little pepper along with some olive oil. So now to the liver, we're gonna add a tablespoon or two of some olive oil, some fresh ground black pepper, and a pinch or two of salt. Now I'm just gonna give this a mix to coat the liver. Now that we've prepped all our ingredients, let's head over to the stove and we'll start the cooking process. So I'm gonna cook this in a cast iron pan. I like the cast iron because it gives me a nice even heat all around. You can use any high rim saute pan, but here I would not use anything that's too shallow because we're gonna build it up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to the hot skillet. And then I'm gonna take the seasoned liver and I'm gonna put it in the pan, making sure that the pan is hot, so as soon as that liver hits, I should hear a sizzle. And I'm gonna spread it around because I wanna get a nice sear on the liver. When I get a nice sear on the outside, it's gonna give me a really nice flavor through that Maillard reaction, the same sear that you put on a steak and why steak tastes so delicious. So I'll probably do this in batches just to make sure that I don't overcrowd the pan. So I'm gonna cook this for about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. And I'm making sure that the liver is cooked through, kind of. I still want a little bit of a pink center, because just like beef, when it's overcooked, it gets dry and crumbly and it loses a lot of flavor. When it's cooked to more of a medium-ish, where it's still got a little bit of a pink center, then the liver has great flavor. So once I start to see a little bit of browning, I'm gonna give these a flip and cook them for another minute or two on the other side. And right now I'm cooking over maybe a medium, maybe a touch over medium-high heat. But you can see this really nice color that we have on the liver without it getting burnt. And it's not pale, it's golden. So once I've gotten nice color on both sides, I'm gonna remove the pieces. I'm gonna add a touch more oil and throw in the second batch. One tip when cooking with cast iron is notice where your pieces are getting more seared or less seared, because cast iron, no matter how evenly you place the heat underneath, you're always gonna get these cold spots. You can see this side of the pan and this edge are a little hotter, not so hot in the middle, and definitely more pale here. So what I like to do is just flip off some of the pieces. So I'll take some of the darker colored pieces and move them to the lighter colored areas, and vice versa. You know, cast iron is probably my favorite thing to cook with, but just like anything else, it has its pluses and minuses. And those cold spots are something that you definitely want to be aware of, especially when searing proteins and you're looking for nice equal sear. But like I said before in this recipe, you don't really have to be super exact. If some pieces are pale and some pieces are perfectly colored, who cares? We're blending them all together. So once these have got nice color on both sides, look how beautiful that color is. That is awesome flavor right there. We're gonna take out these pieces. We're gonna lower our heat just a little bit, probably down to like a nice even medium. We're gonna add just a little bit more oil because liver's super lean. It doesn't render out any fat. You know, people say that liver's unhealthy. I mean, liver doesn't really have much fat. It's mainly protein. Now we're gonna add our onions, and now we're gonna start to reclaim a lot of these awesome flavors that were left by the liver in the pan. All those little burnt bits, that's what really makes the flavor in a dish like this, or any braised dish for that matter. I'm gonna spread the onions out nice and evenly because as they initially cook, they're gonna start to give off some moisture, and that moisture is the perfect thing to start to dissolve. Almost acts like a detergent or like a soap on the bottom of the pan where it like cleans up the pan. Look at all the beautiful color on those onions, and they've just been in the pan for just a moment or two. And we're gonna try to not burn the onion, so I wanna keep the heat a little bit lower. So I just went from medium down to a few clicks below that. And look at this golden color on the onions. I mean, that's not the caramelization of the onions because they haven't been in the pan long enough. That's just the onions picking up all the fond that was on the bottom of this pan from searing that liver. I'm gonna let this cook for a few minutes until these onions soften. Normally I would care about this like big onion right here, like I did such a good job of chopping, except this piece, and this piece, and maybe this piece over here. Everything else is pretty even and equal. You know, I'll see that in a refined dish, but we're blending everything, so who cares? You know, we get to be a little sloppy on this dish when we're cooking. Just a little bit, not a lot. All right, so once these onions start to look a little translucent, I'm gonna add in our garlic. And here I got this fresh thyme that I'm just gonna pull the leaves off of. You can use dried thyme too, but fresh is always gonna be better, and I always have this stuff around. Just take the leaves off and just leave the stems. We're gonna give that a mix and let that cook for a minute or two until the garlic and the thyme becomes very fragrant. You'll smell it. At this point, we're gonna add a little allspice. You can use nutmeg too. This has nutmeg in it, but allspice is just a really nice like floral flavor to complement a lot of like the harshness of this. You can use nutmeg, you can use a combination of cinnamon. I think allspice has both in there, but you want to add it at this point because you want to toast the spice a little bit to really let the flavors come out into this onions and garlic mixture. Now I'm going to add about a half a stick of butter. I'll let this melt. Once the smell of like the allspice, the garlic, and the onions and the thyme all start going, man, does this smell good. I'm just moving this around to let that butter melt. And you can see that the heat in the pan is not very high right now. Now I'm cooking over a medium-low heat. Once the butter is melted, that's where we're gonna add our liquor. You know, a lot of these recipes call for sherry or cognac. I'm gonna use some bourbon. I just really like the flavor of it, like the vanilla, the oak. It's a little stronger than the flavors that you get from like sherry or cognac, but it really does an awesome job of giving that flavor that those would as well. So I'll just put a couple tablespoons in here. And here's the fun part. To flambe, you don't have to, but we're going to, because it helps burn off the alcohol a little faster. Make sure I don't burn my cameras. But once the alcohol is all burnt off, that's when the fire will kick off. And it leaves all its flavor, but the alcohol all evaporates. The smell and the flavor that leaves behind is absolutely amazing. I would drink this just by itself. So now we're gonna season it with some of my base seasoning. This is a blend of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. Now we're gonna put in a little beef broth. This is gonna add nice beefy flavor. It's gonna help bring this all together and emulsify it. Just a little bit, not a lot. We're gonna reduce most of it off. So now I'm gonna put in a little Worcester sauce. Also another like umami, flavorful element. This stuff is absolutely wonderful. And we're also gonna put in a couple of tablespoons of some heavy cream. This is gonna add a nice creaminess, so once this cools down in the fridge, it'll continue to stay creamy. This in addition to the butter that we put in before too. This looks fantastic. So now I'm gonna take the liver that we seared before and we're gonna add that back into this little sauce that we got going on here. And not only do we want the liver in, any of those juices that were left behind, get those in there. So I'm gonna spread the liver out to submerge it as much as possible. And we're gonna simmer it over a low heat till we get a little bit of that heat back into the liver. I'm gonna let this simmer for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes at a really low temperature. I really don't wanna overcook the liver, but I do wanna bring it all back up to temperature because we all want this hot when it hits the food processor. You know, make sure that you're using the right size skillet too. Here I got 12-inch cast iron, and you can see that I have enough liver in here that I've spread it out and I used all the surface area that I got. I have enough liquid in here that it kind of covers the liver because I wouldn't want too many layers of it, or I wouldn't want some of the liver not submerged, or I don't want this too liquidy. So look at what this looks like here, and this is what you want to see right before this goes into the food processor. After this has had a chance to simmer for just those few minutes, I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna let this cool down a little bit and we're gonna blend it down. So now I'm gonna take my liver and I'm gonna put it inside the food processor. I'm gonna use a spoon instead of just dumping it in there because I feel like every time I try to dump stuff in the food processor, I make a big mess. So I'll take my time and put these in a few at a time. And I'm just layering them like around the blades. When you use the food processor, you gotta make sure that the stuff gets to the blades and then it starts all the way at the bottom, because if there's gaps on the bottom and the blades can't get to whatever it's chopping, it's just gonna like sit there. And now we're gonna take this onion and flavor mixture. I mean, I don't even have to blend this. I could eat this just like this, but this looks and smells so good. I mean, if you're using a cast iron pan, I find that a lot of people aren't gonna be able to do this, but maybe it's a two-hand job, or maybe you got a partner that can help you in the kitchen. All right, now I'm gonna take my top, we'll put it on the food processor, and I'll start to pulse it a few times. And once that I see that it's pulsed, I'll just scrape the inside a little bit, just to make sure that there's no big chunks kind of clinging to the outside. And now I'll just run it on for, I don't know, about a minute. After about a minute, we'll check to see if it's nice and smooth and if there's any chunks. And this looks really good. So now from here, I have a glass container with a snap top lid. This is how I like to store it in the fridge. So I'm gonna be really careful to get this from the food processor into this container. And it should be like a slightly like runny consistency. I know it's a bad analogy, but you want this to be like wet cat food. In fact, when I eat this, my wife thinks, she's not a big liver fan, so she thinks I'm eating what looks like cat food, and it basically is, but just really delicious cat food. So I chose a container that was a little small. I'll probably take the rest of this and put this in another smaller container. But I'm gonna take the lid, I'm gonna put this on top, and I'm going to let this chill out in the fridge for a couple hours at the minimum. Overnight is gonna be best because that's when the flavors are gonna get a really good chance to develop, and this is gonna get to that a nice consistency that's very spreadable without it running. You could eat this liver pate a lot of different ways. What we're gonna do here is I got this nice 2 pieces of sourdough that I toasted up a little bit. Once I get the recipe for sourdough, I'll share it with you guys, but I've been working on it and it's been working out pretty well. You can see that we got really nice crumb on this sourdough, but sourdough, especially sourdough toast, is gonna be the perfect thing to eat this beef liver pate. This is how I eat it every day. I really, really like it. We're gonna take these scallions and we're gonna trim them up a little bit, and then we're gonna put a nice fine dice on these scallions, just the greens. So I had this pate in the fridge for about 2 hours. I mean, once it gets solid, it's good, but look how like nice and like spreadable it is, and it's not runny at all. So I'll just take a nice generous amount and spread it on this toast. I mean, if you're keto, maybe you don't do this on top of the bread, but this sourdough bread is the best to eat this because the sourdough bread's got a lot of texture to it. It's hard, it's crumbly. The pate is very soft, so you're gonna wanna consume it with something that's got some crunch to it, maybe some crackers. Sometimes people like to put this on like crunchy fruit, like apples. Maybe we'll try that. And just to garnish it and add a nice onion flavor, we're gonna put some of these scallion greens on top. I mean, look how delicious this looks. I don't know if you think this looks delicious, but I definitely do. I mean, the sourdough bread's great. The beef liver is so good. Liver is a real treat for me. I don't make it a lot for other people. I make it something for myself. And so I really, really enjoy it. So if you're watching this video and maybe you're the liver lover that's gonna make it and other people around you are like, not really my thing. Well, good, more for you. I mean, let's take a bite of this and let's see what this tastes like. That is so good, so flavorful. If you love liver, this is a great way to eat it. I also think this is a great way to continuously eat it. So, you know, piece of sourdough toast like this with a little bit of this liver on top. This is a quick snack that you put together in minutes. The flavor of the liver comes through and everything else comes along with it, and it really amplifies the flavor instead of like muting it. The scallion greens on top are so good. Sometimes I put red onions. You can do that too. Let's try this on a piece of apple. And I've never even tried this before. So a lot of times when I'm trying the food for my videos, I've already tried the food and I kind of know what it's gonna taste like. This one I've seen, but I don't know what it's gonna taste like. But I have an idea that I think it's gonna taste really good. So here I got some honey that I'm just gonna drizzle over the top of each one. All right, now let's see. Beef liver pate, slice of apple, a little bit of honey. This is probably great after a workout. Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. I mean, you could eat it on this, with the honey and the apple. Oh man. Or if you want to go a little bit more savory, the sourdough toast in here. I don't even care that I'm switching lanes in between sweet and savory. This tastes so good. If you want to see the original liver and onions recipe, I'll throw that right there. If you like this video, hit like. If it's the first time you're at my channel, please subscribe, and I'll see you there, and I'll see you in other videos. Thanks.